Well, my name is Christine Ermenc, and I am the former director of the Windsor Historical Society, and I was the writer of the Annie's Home children's book.
My name is Susan Tait Porcaro, and I'm the illustrator and designer of Annie's Home, which was written by Christine Ermenc. Well, I do live in Windsor now. I've been here since '92, but I was born and raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, so Windsor is very different from where I was raised. I knew when I was a little kid that I wanted to draw. I think my earliest memory is drawing, sitting at the table with crayons, and I knew by the time I was 6 or 7 I wanted to be an artist. I got my degree in fashion illustration from Chamberlain School of Design in Boston, and then I got my BFA in commercial illustration from University of Lowell in Lowell, Mass.
Well, this house is really a learning laboratory. You can learn in so many ways, and people have so many different ways of learning. Some people really like listening to a guide, and when Christina, Vita, and I were coming up with a strategy for how to interpret the house, we were thinking, okay, there are some people that don't particularly love listening. There are kids and people who like exploring, so let's try to make this house hands-on. And there are people who love listening from interpreters who are doing living history. In other words, they're portraying people who lived in the house. And we had some very, very talented actors who portrayed Captain Nathaniel Howard and Anne Howard. Those were great and popular programs. There are people who just like opening drawers and exploring. And the inspiration actually for me actually kind of comes from my mother, who was a children's librarian, and I was lucky enough to have her read stories to us every single night. And so I've always loved children's stories and books, and I'm still the person who goes to the library and comes out with a big stack of books to. So I've loved the medium, and I've not particularly written children's stories, but I've always told children's stories because my little sister was insatiable, and after lights were out, it was like, okay, tell me another story. I want another story. I want another story. So I'm kind of used to telling stories.
I started working here as office manager in January of '16, part-time. It's 4 days a week. And Christine, at the time, Christine was the executive director. And I want to say it was about two and a half years ago, she had mentioned in passing she was writing a children's story about the little girl, Annie Howard, who lived here. And I thought, oh, that's a great project. And then a little while later, she sat me down and said, I would really love it if you would consider illustrating this book. And I was deeply honored for her to ask me that, because that's putting a lot of faith in my work. And I suggested also, I said, if you want, I will design it so you don't have to hire someone else to do that too. I could just do the whole thing. And she said, that sounds great. So it started out, she sent me the text of the book, and I read the story, and then she and I sat down together and broke it down into pages, where all the page breaks are going to be, and corresponding artwork for that page. And I went through it and wrote down all my notes on this is what I see, and this is my vision for that page, what the art's going to look like. And that was a process that she and I did that together, and she would tweak things along the way. So we finally got it down to I knew exactly what I wanted to depict in the artwork. What I needed was models, because being as a realistic book, I need reference material. I need historically accurate photos. I need paintings. I need people to pose for me so that I can get all the poses right. And we were very lucky to have actors who do living history here in this building, and with our curator, Kristen Wands, and Christine's knowledge, and Michelle's knowledge, our librarian archivist, and our hearth cook, Becky Hendricks. We really had a wealth of knowledge for me to rely on. And Christine set up a day in February of 2019 that everyone came here, and we were going to shoot everyone posing for me. So I basically had the books kind of with little chicken scratchings on them. Okay, next page, I want you guys to stand here and be doing this. Well, for instance, the first page of the book, Annie and her mother, Nancy, they've just lost husband and little baby brother. She's very sad. She's been taken out of her school. She's heading to Windsor to live with grandparents she doesn't even remember. So she's scared and she's sad, and I really wanted that image to be very impactful. So I had our models, Kira and Susan, sit out on the porch like they were in a stagecoach, and it was cold, so they all had clothing on. They were all huddled next to each other, and it really helped me get the feeling I wanted to get, because it's not just the pose, it's the expressions on everyone's faces. And I really lucked out with the models because they were just wonderful.
Christina was very careful to locate the interpretation in a year where there were 3 generations living in the house, and one of them was little Annie. And so I kind of knew that if I was going to go for a children's story, she had to be part of it. And then it was just what was going to be the hook here. And that was really what took the time, not the writing of it. It was, okay, so she's here. What is it about her experience that most people can relate to? And I think everybody relates to being a new person without a purpose, you know, whether it's your first day at school, whether it's your first day in a new job, whether it's your first day in a new community. And here she was, an 8-year-old with grandparents she'd really never met, new community. How was she going to make this hers? So once I had that, it was, okay, so what is her experience in the home? And Christina Vita and her wonderful team of volunteers did an amazing amount of research to bring this house together in the way it is. It's all based on Christina's fabulous research. So I had her research notes, but then again, I wanted to know a little bit more about kind of everyday life. And so there are websites, Colonial Williamsburg has a wonderful website, and they kind of showcase different aspects of home life. There's a book by Jane Nylander called Our Own Snug Fireside, which was real helpful to me. There are all sorts of things out there, but I really did have to, kind of get a sense for myself, like what would Annie's daily life have been like? And so the story began kind of coming together. She has to find a purpose in this new place, and part of the purpose is becoming part of the household and doing the work with her grandmother and helping her grandfather in the store. And there actually is a lot of knowledge that has kind of passed out of the world that our grandparents and grandparents would have had, and one of those was animal husbandry. Everybody had animals. Everybody knew how to take care of animals. And this is kind of an unusual source. Once I had finished the story, I gave it to Becky Hendricks, who is our bookkeeper and is also a reenactor. And she kind of took the story and vetted it amongst her reenactors group. And there were people there who actually raised chickens, raised beef. And there were a couple of things that I got absolutely wrong. And it wasn't in any of the sources that I'd explored, but just having people that kind of could suggest how I would have Annie take eggs from under a broody hen, kind of thing. That was pretty interesting, and I just want to give a shout out to the reenactor world, because they know things that some academic historians would not.
I was really concerned about historical accuracy for the book, and besides having a team of people behind me, I really wanted to get the clothing accurate. I did a lot of research, Googled a lot of 1810 paintings and portraits of children. I had a sort of a time frame between 1800 and 1810 I was looking at, because not everyone's wearing the latest fashion, but I tried to keep it as accurate as possible. Even there's one page where there's a scene with Annie with a baby calf. What kind of cows did they have in Windsor? And that's where, everyone who in this organization that has that historical knowledge was my go-to.
Well, we wanted to be as close to the historical record as we could, and of course a lot of it is guesswork because we just don't know. But for instance, when I was trying to come up with who would the supporting characters be, I had to find out who were the children in the neighborhood at that time? So that took some digging, going to Henry Styles' History of Ancient Windsor, the genealogy section, and, knowing which households were located where, who would have children of that age. I knew that I wanted there to be a boy in there, so it wasn't just all girls. I thought that it would be wonderful if we could come up with a child of color, but we couldn't really find anybody. We knew that Dr. Hezekiah Chafee had enslaved Africans working in his house, although they were manumitted about that time, but we couldn't find any evidence of children. And so I guess one of the points I want to make is that this book isn't completely reflective of the wonderfully diverse community that Windsor is now, but this is one story for which we had a lot of information, and there are so many other stories out there in the community just waiting to be discovered. Once I knew what the story was, that didn't take long at all. It was the research and the thinking about what would resonate with people that took the time. And I was kind of working this in with running Windsor Historical Society, so it was little minutes here and there, or I'd be thinking about it. I can remember going down to the Windsor Public Library because it's been a long time since I've had little kids, and just how long are children's stories? And I knew this wasn't for preschoolers, kind of age 5, 6 to 8. But what did books look like that were written? How long were they? How many pages were they? And so there was that kind of research. And so on and off, I was kind of thinking about it, although not concentrating on it, a month or two. And then, I've had to be a really fast writer just because I did press releases and I did grants and so forth and so on when I was here. So, and again, I couldn't really write it, straight, but probably, 1 or 2 days, 2 or 3 days, spread out over a couple of weeks. And I'm not sure I would have thought about a children's story had I not known that we had somebody with just supreme talent right on our staff who could do realistic illustration. And actually, I should say too that I wanted this book to be the sort of thing that people could come through the house, and then the book would be a keepsake, and it would be realistic enough that they would be reminded of the house. And then I also thought if people could read the book beforehand and then be looking for things that were in the book. In fact, the first version of the script that I gave to Sue, I had bolded everything that was actually in the house, just as something to make her think about, well, could she illustrate this, or could this thing be in there? She sets the table at one point, and she works in her grandfather's store at one point, and she does a lot of work in the keeping room, and so, every room, there's something that's in the book. Well, the one thing that we did, which worked, and I kind of organized it, we got our actors that were Captain Nathaniel Howard and Anne Howard, and Becky Hendricks and her husband Paul, who are our hearth cookers, and we found this lovely young woman, Kira, and I'm blanking out on her left, Kira Doyle from First Church, who is a wonderfully expressive kid. Sue found her, and we brought them all together, and I really wanted Sue to kind of have the feeling that she had pretty much complete freedom here. So I was trying to be hands-off, because I think an artist, opinion by somebody saying isn't the best.
Kira Doyle is Annie Howard, and Becky Hendricks is Mrs. Howard. Walter Montani is Captain Howard. Becky's husband Paul played an extra in one of the scenes, and Susan Buchholz, who actually, when we do Living History, she plays Mrs. Howard, but for this purpose, she stood in as Nancy Howard, Annie's mother. It's such a heartwarming story. As I mentioned earlier, here Annie is coming in to live with her grandparents that she didn't remember, and how she learns and grows and kind of comes out of her shell and becomes part of the Windsor community. And I really love it. It's kind of given me a warm spot for Captain and Mrs. Howard, because in the story they're just so welcoming to her because they love her. This is their granddaughter. So it's a very heartwarming story.
Well, it was just amazing to see the story that was in my head come to life on paper. Sue did an amazing job.
Such a rewarding experience, and I learned a lot about Windsor history myself. I absorb a lot in my day job, but this was just an amazing experience. And again, it was a labor of love, and I'm very proud of the product.